Welcome. Welcome, everybody. My teacher's heart today is singing with pride because today I am not the presenter. The gathering today is going to be presented by 3 of our first-year seminary students. And the way this workshop, or rather this gathering came about, is that we have in our seminary program a month where the students are asked to choose a religion that they would like to study in detail. And these 3 students, among many others, chose the Tao. And I have to say that I personally have a great affection for the Tao. So this was my opportunity to invite in this Tao Te Ching that really speaks to them. And even more importantly, I think the central issue is how can we take this vast world of wisdom and pick out its essence that we can share in this 1-hour time period. So I'm really grateful that these 3 stepped forward to do this with me. This is an experiment, and I'm really hopeful that it will bring something unique to you. So before we get into the Tao proper, I just want to talk a little bit about the translations of Tao Te Ching. So Tao Te Ching is a book that a few versions of it has actually been found over the years. They were all written around 400 BCE. And they were written in classical Chinese, which means the text has no active or passive voice. It has no singular or plural. It has no case, no person, no tense, and no mood. So it's really like a set of edicts. And what that creates is a lot of possibility of interpretation. And especially when you're translating something like that into a language like English, you cannot really get away from the person who's translating, imprinting their personality on the translation. And if you read many of the Tao translations, you're going to find that some of them are very poetic, very mystical. Others are very simple, straightforward. And some of them are even somewhat legalistic, because there's a strong Confucian influence in many of the translators. So one of the things that we have tried to do today is to pull from several different translations. So you start to get a feel for the range of ways that a single verse can be translated. With that, we will start this evening. And I am going to start it off by reading the very opening verse of Tao Te Ching. And I have chosen for today a translation by Jiafu Feng and Jane English. And this translation was done in 1997. This is the opening verse, chapter 1 of Tao Te Ching. And this is what it says. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The nameless is the beginning of heaven and earth. The named is the mother of 10,000 things. The nameless is the beginning of heaven and earth. The named is the mother of 10,000 things. Ever desireless, one can see mystery. Ever desiring, one can see the manifestations. These 2 spring from the same source, but differ in name. This appears as darkness. Darkness within darkness. The gate to all mystery. And now it is my pleasure to invite our 3 presenters for this evening. So David, if you can spotlight Phillipa, Stacy, and Saibhung. take it away.
I'm going to begin by reading chapter 4. The way is empty. And this translation is by James Legge, which was done in 1891. The Tao is like the emptiness of a vessel. And in our employment of it, we must be on guard against all fullness. How deep and unfathomable it is, as if it were the honored ancestor of all things.
I will be also reading chapter 4. This translation is by Jonathan Starr in 2008. The way is empty, yet it fills every vessel with endless supply. The way is hidden, yet it shines in every corner of the universe.
I'm going to share a few thoughts on how this verse is applicable to me in daily life. I'm a go-go bunny. I'm a modern woman. I make meals for people. I drive people places. And I go fast. My mode is to go tremendously fast. That speed has allowed me to get myself educated. It's allowed me to start a business on a back road in the country. And in a certain sense, it's allowed me to enjoy a kind of success. But when I go fast like this, I get agitated. I get anxious. And my mind is so filled with details that the experience isn't really that satisfying. It's kind of hollow. But I'm sitting solidly in the second half of my life now. And my values are changing. I need reflection time. I value sitting with my dreams and imagining. My relationships, my current relationships, require presence. And it's really important to me, the rapport that I have with my own self and with my deep intuition. And those things can't be rushed. Being with children, you can't rush. Being with older people, you can't rush. Doesn't work. The way is empty, and yet it fills every vessel to endless supply. The way is hidden, and yet it shines in every corner of the universe. I was sitting in sacred circle with my sister friends. And I was finishing my check-in. I was kind of combing my consciousness to see if there's anything left that wanted to be shared. And there wasn't anything. But I did kind of have this tingle. And so I sat with that. And what began to emerge was like a scene from Fantasia, you know, where the brooms start sweeping themselves and there's stardust swirling and twirling. My experience was that something was emerging. And I found in that moment a request on my lips. Like from nowhere, I found myself asking, would you hold me in this period of growth? I asked. I'm feeling unsteady. All this is new. Will you hold me in kindness while I grow? The way is hidden, yet it shines in every corner of the universe. Let's pause in silent reflection. This is a translation from 2001 by Jonathan Starr. Speak little. Hold to your own nature. A strong wind does not blow all morning. A cloudburst does not last all day. The wind and rain are from heaven and earth, and even these do not last long. How much less so the efforts of man? One who lives in accordance with the truth becomes the embodiment of the Tao. His actions become those of nature, his ways those of heaven. It is through such a one that heaven rejoices, that earth rejoices, that all of life rejoices.
I'm going to read the same chapter 23. This translation is by Stephen Mitchell, and it was done in 1988. Express yourself completely, then keep quiet. Be like the forces of nature. When it blows, there is only wind. When it rains, there is only rain. When the clouds pass, the sun shines through. If you open yourself to the Tao, you are at one with the Tao, and you can embody it completely. If you open yourself to insight, you are at one with insight, and you can use it completely. If you open yourself to loss, you are at one with loss, and you can accept it completely. Open yourself to the Tao, then trust your natural responses, and everything will fall into place.
So I've had this lifelong hatred of the sun. And I find it's just not that relatable, a little difficult to explain. It's our most vital source of energy. It's life-giving, considered a deity. And to me, it's oppressive and it burns my skin, and I just want to escape when I'm in it. So it's been a question that I keep bringing on my spiritual path because it feels like it has to be significant in some way. And I've just sort of landed on that I'm perhaps more sensitive than I realize. I'm a Cancer, and the sun is in fact intense. But it hasn't changed my relationship to the sun, and I still struggle to be in it. So studying Buddhism this year, I also wrestled with this concept of suffering. May all beings be free from suffering, such a central theme. And I found myself wanting it for others and not prioritizing it for myself, or thinking I needed that relief. And then we had a presenter from the Zen Buddhist tradition, and she had us do this exercise with a partner. And for 3 minutes, my partner said, "Tell me something that annoys you." And I would answer, "Tell me something that annoys you." And it turns out I had a really long list that started with the sun. And it included things like mayonnaise and leaf blowers and strollers and playgrounds and certainty and uncertainty. And it was kind of absurd and really funny. But I actually had a pretty big revelation that there were these thousands of ways that I was suffering on a daily basis. And they all had to do with my relationship to discomfort and my need to escape it. So spending time with the Tao, and specifically this passage, I found there were some really deep lessons for me. Places all of existence into this fluid, beautiful frame where everything has meaning when connected to the Tao. And these words like God, which I struggle to say and let alone define, are irrelevant, and suffering is as much a part of its essence as joy. And I find it beautiful because the Tao doesn't discriminate. So it isn't asking you or me or the world to be any better than it is, because light and dark coexist here. And yet in it, I found there was a way where I could reframe my relationship to everything. So to all the resistance and all the discomfort and all the horrors that we experience in this lifetime. And personally, it felt like an invitation to shift and soften, this path to freedom without detachment. Express yourself completely, then keep quiet. Be like the forces of nature. Lastly, I'll share this past year, my first year of seminary, definitely been in seeker mode, which I hope some of you relate. And I joke that it's at times a little like spiritual ADD, or I've had too many flavors of ice cream. And I keep jumping into each tradition and trying to embrace it. And I hope that I'm going to be swept off my feet and my path is going to be illuminated and I'm going to understand my purpose. And that hasn't happened. Probably too much of a skeptic at heart. And I accept that, but with it comes some self-doubt and some questioning, am I open to the experience? Am I missing something? But I found in sort of resting here in the Tao, I discovered what felt almost like a back door. And if I just opened it and I went down its path, everything made a lot more sense. Open yourself to the Tao. Trust your natural responses, and everything will fall into place. Thank you. Let's just take a moment of silence. So next I'm reading chapter 48, Wu Wei, translation by J.H. MacDonald, 1996. One who seeks knowledge learns something new every day. One who seeks the Tao unlearns something new every day. Less and less remains until you arrive at non-action. When you arrive at non-action, nothing will be left undone. Mastery of the world is achieved by letting things take their natural course. You cannot master the world by changing the natural way.
This is the same chapter, number 43. This translation is by Stephen Mitchell in 1988. In pursuit of knowledge, every day something is added. In the practice of the Tao, every day something is dropped. Less and less do you need to force things until you finally arrive at non-action. When nothing is done, nothing is left undone. True mastery can be gained by letting things go their own way. It cannot be gained by interfering.
In an age when we are driven to gather more and learn more and do more constantly, I found myself captivated by this idea in the Tao of non-doing, which is Wu Wei. And specifically the idea of Wu Wei, Wu Wei, which actually means doing without doing. And I found myself thinking, if only I could understand and achieve this, then perhaps my day-to-day life could be different. So I'm going to tell you first why I needed this concept of non-doing, then what the idea means to me, and then tell you a story about how I managed to actually notice that it was starting to come into my life in a very fruitful way. So first of all, I am a reforming perfectionist, and I also had many, many years in which I was very unwell. And specifically, I was overwhelmingly fatigued. So with these two things at play in my life, I managed to have this constant overwhelming idea that there was just too much to do and not enough energy. Too much to do, not enough energy. And I had that highway in my brain that ran all the time. And so then when I really heard this idea that non-action, non-doing, how could that be different? How could I manage and hold things differently? So this idea, when nothing is done and nothing is left undone, is really kind of crazy. And I recently had the very good fortune of meeting Jane English. And Jane was the translator with her then husband, Jafu, the translation that Sushmita used in the beginning. And so Jane first translated with Jafu in 1975 up in Vermont, in an area where I was about a month ago, and I happened to meet her there. So we were walking around the pond, and I said to her, so Jane, what does Wu Wei mean to you? And she said, it means effortless action. And I said to her, so do you think about it? How does it manifest in your life? And she said, I think about it all the time, even all these years later. And she said, it's like, see that canoe out there? It's when you're standing on the edge of the river and you push yourself out into the canoe and you allow the river to take you with the flow of life. She said, that's Wu Wei. But I want you to be really clear. it's not about being passive and just letting life take you whichever way that it will go. You make the intent to push yourself out into the river and allow yourself to be carried by life. So I've been thinking about this in the last few weeks before I left Australia, and I was completely overwhelmed by all I had to do. And one day I had gone into the country to conduct a funeral for a friend of mine who had died suddenly, and she had my own name. We were both Phillipa. So I was very tired on every level. And I came home at the end of the day, and normally I would just go, too much to do, not enough energy, and lie on the couch. But I thought, what if I think of all this that I have to do differently? And specifically, I had a lot of One Spirit homework. So I said, maybe I could do my homework, but think of it as doing nothing. So I found myself, I sat down at my computer and I just started to write. I thought, I'm just going to do this and trust that somehow life will support me. And I did about 2 hours work. I got up, I was no more tired. I was really happy that I'd managed to get something down, and I started to get a sense of what this means. That when we strip away the anxiety and the agitation that we have about how much that we have to do, we can start to let the energy of that be channeled into fruitfulness, where we can do the things we need to do. And in fact, all that is not serving us can strip away. And so we can be, as it says in the Tao, every day something is dropped. Less and less do you need to force things until you finally arrive at non-action. When nothing is done, nothing is left undone. So let's now just close our eyes for a moment and imagine, what would it be like to live in the way that nothing is done, but nothing is left undone, allowing the river to carry us.
We ride that bell into its silence. So now we want to give you some time to really sit with all that you've heard and what's arising in you. So we're going to play a video for 5 minutes. It's just a loop of an ocean. You can watch it, you can write, you can move, you can sing, you can dance, do whatever feels like it wants to do as you contemplate the Tao, and then we'll come back and we'll have a conversation. So, what's arising? What's present? What wants to be shared in this circle? Since we're a small enough group, if you want, you can unmute or you can raise your hand, real or virtual. I see you, Daddy.
What rises up is just a whole lot of gratitude for you, for beautiful women that I get to know you and experience what you have to share with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Daddy. And the same goes to you. We are richer for knowing you.
Thank you.
Susie.
I second what Jati said. Thank you for this amazing evening to bring the Tao to life again after so many years of studying it. It's good to hear. I didn't realize there were so many translations, and I appreciated your explanation about what people brought to the translations. So the words that came up for me were go with the flow and be in the zone. And that for me is Wu Wei. And I'm a little disappointed that we didn't do the exercise about all the things that bother us, because my list is still going. But it's a beautiful evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Susie. Thank you. And the specific invitation in that exercise was what annoys you? Because she said if she brought in suffering, it would be too big and people would kind of feel like, oh, I can't talk about the cat waking me up at 3 a.m. You have to talk about important things. So her invitation was what annoys you. And that was very well done. Yeah.
Sorry, just adjusting to my online presence here. Well, I am Ana Teresa from class of 2012, so it's also been a while since I've sat with this text, an early form of this text, because I have to warn all of you who, like me in seminary and afterwards, have had to rely on libraries and public texts, that is often the older translations that are out of copyright, including my great gratitude to the nation of India for printing so many of these texts in English, and they are not copyright enforceable in the United States. So there's two things that really came to me. The first is the issue of time, which I've really been struggling with as somebody who is, like Sushmita, interested in science, because time is one of those aspects of existence where we humans are so different from other aspects of creation, the way that we anticipate it, the way that we obsess about it. And I'm wondering if part of some of the confusion around this text for me is specifically this way in which it was originally not thought of in the same form of time that we are experiencing today, the not having tenses. So the idea of doing without doing, the focus on done, on the completion of the task, is what really comes out for me. Because if you are taking a much longer perspective, you think, well, we finished this bridge, we finished this infrastructure, but how long is that going to last? We know we're going to have to do it again. We solve one series of social injustices only to invent new differences that can be hierarchized and that we have to figure out how to work with. So for me, it is a wonderful way of thinking about how there is never a sense of completion. The image of the water reminds me that There are different ways of arriving at the same place. We might have one intention, which is the river itself, but some people will take side currents, and that is perfectly all right. And I feel so many times in both the spiritual and the political life, there is a proper way to do something and an improper way. And we see so much competition between organizations and people that are actually on the same page. But in our small perspective over small resources, we fight. And the last thing I wanted to bring up is that I always think about, well, how can I apply this collectively? How can I apply this to the larger political, cultural moment that I'm a part of? And I think that this is actually consistent with our looking at text, because just as there is no translation that doesn't involve a perspective, the idea of deciding what is a natural way is also a matter of perspective. Our culture is part of our nature. These things are not separate. So for me, the issue that really comes to the fore is privilege, and how Wu Wei can deal with the suffering and effort of moving away from privilege. And I say this without being on some kind of high horse or higher position, because if you have lived any time in other parts of the world where someone who is of a minority here in the United States and working class, I lived with a partner on a graduate student's salary in a slum in the Dominican Republic. And I remember the day that I left, my neighbors competing and arguing over who would get my garbage, over who would get my used plastic bags, used pieces of plastic, cardboard boxes. So there's oftentimes this idea that the only people who are going to suffer, if they want to suffer around getting away from privilege, are rich people, and that's not the case. I also like air conditioning. I've also liked burgers. I loved all of these things that sometimes only more conservative people think they're going to have to let go of for the earth to survive. No, it's all of us, including, people that don't feel like we have very much right now. So I think that this is where there's a beautiful tool for us to use in struggle. And I love being a tool using primate, because I get to put this along with all of the other tools and think about, this is the way that I can make a connection with somebody who thinks I couldn't possibly understand them, right? But actually the issues are very, very similar in our culture. Time equals money. So when there is more money, people throw it at their problems with time. So if you don't have time for your job and your family, you get the nanny, you get someone else to do your lawn, all of these things. Yeah. Right. But the reality.
Thank you, Anna. I think we need to let other people speak.
I apologize.
But thank you. No, that's okay.
I apologize. I've been here with the pandemic for 2.5 years. Don't see many people. I have to remember to turn off the mic at a certain point.
No, thank you for bringing that to the fore. And one of the things that you said that really struck me is how, when the Tao Te Ching was originally written, the concept of time was so different than now. That's really a gift to our circle, that idea, because I hadn't consciously thought of it. But now that you say it, yes. And many, many indigenous traditions, including Australian Aborigines, I know there's no sense of tense. And imagine if you lived in a world that didn't distinguish to be done, doing, and done as separate things. How would that life look like? So beautiful, thank you. And Dominique Faith.
Hi, I would like to say thank you for the wonderful presentation. It was great. And I'm new to Tao, and I really learned a lot. And what I did notice from all three that were read together is that it was a general theme of consumption of action, not necessarily material things, but action of the heart's energy. And basically, you consume the energy and your actions of those energies, and you have to watch how you place your heart's actions. And that's basically what I had learned from it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Allison.
Thank you. Thank you. The waves. So much energy, but seemingly so effortless. I love the ocean. I need to go there soon. And the sky is so much part of that scene, seemingly doing nothing but contributing. Thank you.
Thank you. And how each wave is different. They're all waves, but each one is unique. Maria?
Thanks. Before I go, I think Stephanie is waving her hand, so I would like to defer to her first if she wants to go.
Ah, okay. Sure, Stephanie.
Did you
go.
want to speak, Stephanie? Maybe not.
No, I think you're muted, Stephanie.
There. Am I on? Do you hear me now?
Yes, we hear you now.
I love the ocean. I used to live at the ocean. And the waves are gorgeous. The movement is gorgeous, but the ocean is still the ocean. Whether it's waves or nothing, it's the ocean. And that, to me, is the Tao.
Mm-hmm.
And Heather, I don't know if she mentioned asking. When we ask, it opens us up to listen. And part of the Tao is being open. Whether you take the advice or not, to listen, to open, to ask is such an important part for me to be in the Tao. And it seems like for me, in my state that I'm in now, the less I worry about time, the more time I have. It's just the things that come through to me wouldn't come through if I was kvetching and worrying. When I let go, everything happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And yes, yes, yes. Maria.
Okay. First of all, thanks to our presenters. And I have to say that I am so proud to be their classmate. Like, you people might, get to see them today, but I get to see them even more. And I'm just so happy about it. And I think you're all just amazing. So I just want to say that. And, I also studied the Tao for my Choose Your Own Adventure month, but I didn't, I don't know, there's so much there in that tiny little book, right? That's just what's astounding to me. And even of all the things I remember thinking about, I mean, some of these were mentioned and some of them were not. So I guess I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to Anna for what you said, because first of all, the idea of never completing anything absolutely terrifies me. And so I sort of want to give voice to that. Like, I love both those things. I love the idea of what if there were no difference between doing, will do, and done. And then in the other sense, I think, oh my God, what relief not to be always striving for that desire to have it be done, but how could I live without the satisfaction of having checked things off my list? So seriously, I've got some real growing to do. And I just want to say that what I heard tonight was a lot of possibility and a lot of hope. And I want to say, just like the many translations that we heard about, I felt like with Saibhung and Stacy and Phillipa, we heard 3 beautiful translations of wonderful truth. So thank you.
Thank you, Maria. And by the way, you are the only one who has that struggle. None of us have it. Rob, go ahead.
I wanted to thank the 3 of you for sharing not just the words of the Tao, but especially the meaning that it brought to you. That was so beautiful and so heartfelt. I also am very grateful for the choice to share the images at the beginning and at the end. The Tao translations all have the limitation of changing what was a pictographic form of communication into words. And to share the images, I think, I remember as you were sharing the river image at the beginning, I thought, well, we could just watch this for an hour and that would really be sufficient. But I'm glad we didn't, because I really appreciated the sharings. And what came to me at the end, watching the ocean, was a feeling initially of that we were watching 2 different things. We were watching the land and the water. And then over time, it became clear that the distinction was not so real. There really isn't a difference between wet sand and sandy water. And I hope that we all, as we interpret these words, interpret these images and share from our hearts, get past the feelings of being so different.
Thank you, Rob. Yes, yes. May that be a blessing for all of us. And there's been some beautiful people have been writing beautiful things in the chat. And I'm noticing it's already 8:02. So I don't want to read them all out loud. So thank you. But before we finish, let us check out with a word or a phrase that for us captures the essence of today. You can speak it out, you can type it in the chat if you want, and I'll read it out loud, whatever feels right.
Peace.
Peace. Peacefully resting, fullness, hope, still, love.
The 10,000.
Acceptance. 10,000 things, you said?
The 10,000.
The 10,000.
Now.
Breath.
Now.
Now, yes.
Now.
Effortless action, allowing, breath. Trust in the flow. Peace that passes all understanding.
I'm doubling now.
You're allowed. Thank you, everybody. My word is gratitude. Gratitude for all of you, gratitude for the Tao, gratitude for our community, and how wonderful that we get to sit in circle, even though we are confined to our homes. How extraordinary is that?